Mark and I met in college. We dated for, I guess, 8 years before we got married. I was in graduate school and studying for my PhD. We adopted William in 2000, and then Emma came along in 2002. William's the big brother. He's just always on the go. Emma is funny, like her dad, actually.
Emma's a beautiful little girl with a great personality. She has a great sense of humor. She's gregarious. She's full of energy. We were just living a happy life of, people with 2 young children that are exploring everything. So that's the way life was before Emma was diagnosed.
Emma is aware of her condition. She can explain to people that she has pulmonary hypertension and how it affects her life. She understands that she has limitations. Long term, I don't think she understands long-term impact, and I don't think she's ready to know that.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. It was like a crisp day in March. We were a little bit late for church, and so there was nobody around.
Emma says, "Mommy, can I run up the street?" I said, "Sure you can." So she ran to the end of the block, and she waited for us to reach her, and she was panting, and she says, "Mommy, I can't walk anymore. I can't go." I said, "Sure you can." "No, Mommy." And then she just collapsed to the ground. "Emma, what are you doing? Emma, what are you doing?"
She looked gray. She had a gray, and her eyes were rolled in the back of her head.
Then on the ground, she curled into a fetal position and started to shake. And Mark said to me, "I think she's having a seizure."
And I had heard this just high-pitched whine.
And so I reached out, I picked her up and held her.
Nothing like this had ever happened. And so when Beth was cradling her, I saw her. We both didn't know what to do.
So we get to the ER.
Boom, she went into it again.
Mark, he just ends up running down the street carrying Emma, banging on the ER door to let us in.
They had her all wired up to monitor her heart function and everything else. And as she was on the treadmill, I looked at her and she said, "I can't do this, I can't do this." And then she let out that same familiar whine, and I said, she's going into it right now."
I was standing by the bedside, and one of the doctors came in, and he says, "Wow." And I said, What's wow?" And he says, "Wow, look at those pressures." I said, "Pressures? What pressures are you talking about?" He said, "In the RV." I said, "Do you mean pulmonary hypertension?" And he looked at me, and he had forgotten that I worked in the field. And that wasn't the way I should have found out about it, but I did. And my heart sunk. Mark wasn't in the room, so I quickly left to go find him. And I said, "Mark, it's pulmonary hypertension." And he just looks at me. I said, "There's no cure." And he just looks at me. I said, "They die of this disease, Mark."
The problem with pulmonary hypertension is it's not a disease that has a cure at this time. And the normal progression of the disease is usually such that after someplace between 3 or 5 years, the disease has progressed to the point where the heart can no longer keep up with blood flow through the lungs. And without treatment, the majority of people will die from progressive right-sided heart failure.
It's a little bit like if you have a garden hose and you'd like water to flow freely through it, and you kink the hose, you know that the stream of water will slow down and there's a pressure buildup. Well, the same thing is true. When the small arteries in the lung are smaller than normal in diameter, it's harder for blood to get through them.
So what happens is, as the right side of the heart is unable to pump the blood through the lungs, the blood starts to back up. What the patient notices most is that they can't do anything without getting short of breath. And in the final stages, they become short of breath even when they're not doing anything.
I feel fortunate that I have a good understanding of what is causing Emma's disease, that I can better serve as an advocate for her. However, it's also incredibly difficult for me as I sit in seminars or read literature and am aware of the high mortality rate of the disease. It's depressing and it's hard.
Emma's mom, Beth Harrington, is a PhD researcher doing research on the lung, not directly on pulmonary hypertension, but on related issues. She's very familiar with a lot of the biology that's relevant here. That's made it easy to discuss what we understand about the disease and the rationale for doing what we do.
Emma is a remarkable little girl. I guess it's fair to say that we think of her differently now that we know that she has the disease that we work on. But even before, we kind of knew that she was a special little girl. When you see somebody that you know, and particularly somebody that you work with, who develops the disease that is supposed to be rare and that you're supposed to try to fix, it seems like it's almost impossible. But there's nothing like having somebody that you know develop the disease that you're working on to make you try that much harder to find a cure for the disease.
Following Emma's diagnosis with pulmonary hypertension, she was utilizing oxygen 24/7.
When she first came home with it, and they gave her an adult-sized oxygen tank on an adult-sized dolly, and there's no way she can possibly lug this thing around or get it to school.
First, I had a dolly, which was like a stroller with a huge oxygen tank on it, and it got kind of heavy, and like 2 or 3 times a day, I had to go down to the nurse's office and get a new tank, so it was like heavier and heavier.
When Emma first went back to school following the initial diagnosis, she was different because the children were used to Emma as a typical little girl, and now she came back wearing the cannula and pulling oxygen behind her.
We had to make arrangements for her to go on, the short school bus so that they could help her on and off with the oxygen. And so she would lug this dolly around school, upstairs, downstairs.
Which caused problems. Kids tripping on it, she would hit people, she'd hit herself, falling over and so forth. So it was pretty awkward.
And she was having some trouble, self-image issues, Somebody once asked her to draw a picture of herself, and she drew a picture with her oxygen cannulas in her nose.
Was always limited by the length of the cannula. It was like a 5-foot cannula. We took it on vacation one year and the wheel broke off. And I'm like, well, there's no way we can get through this vacation without oxygen. So I had to go to a local welder down there, and I paid him to weld her oxygen tank.
Mark came up with an idea. He sees people walking around with these camel packs with water, and so he suggested that I see if I can get a camel pack for it. And we got a smaller oxygen tank.
And she tried it and was able to, run around without lugging this clinkety-clank dolly behind her. It was liberating for her to have this backpack. Now she was able to climb on monkey bars, go on a swing. I went on a field trip with her to a water slide. It's oxygen, so it floats. She can go in the water with this thing, and so it's not like, even though she has a 5-foot cannula on, it's much more portable.
So that worked out really great. Today we're going back to Children's for a 6-month follow-up after Emma's most recent heart catheterization. We have been trying to wean her off oxygen during the day, but we're monitoring her pressures, and should any change happen in the pressures, we'll have to reconsider.
We use an echocardiogram or cardiac ultrasound in order to monitor the pressure in her lungs and also make sure that function of her heart is good.
Following those tests, we then have a meeting with Dr. Kulik to discuss the findings, for him to examine Emma.
A very important part of the office visit is to see how she's doing in general, whether she's developed any new symptoms and how things are going.
His communication with our family is very frank and honest and open, which I appreciate.
Emma's one of the fortunate patients that has responded very well to therapy. I think her prognosis is very favorable. Emma, thank you for coming today. It was wonderful to see you again.
The Children's Museum has a lot of interactive displays that Emma really enjoys. Frequently, I'll take her there as kind of a reward for all the things that she has to go through. These appointments end up allowing Emma and I to have these special times together. It's anticipated at this point that she will remain stable. However, because the majority of the patient population are women, it's strongly believed that estrogen has a role in the disease. As she becomes a teenager, her condition can change and potentially worsen. So that's in the back of my mind right now.
The kids at Emma's school have evolved with her, with this disease. You know, quickly everybody in our town, realized who Emma was. And her friends and playmates were cooperative and helpful. She gets along with all her friends well.
Emma entered my classroom this year, at the beginning of 4th grade, and end of August. She was delightful right from the start. Her personality just shines right through. She is bubbly and excited about school, excited about learning. And she's a great asset to our classroom.
I get to see Emma every day, and I'll tell you, she brightens my day because she always comes in with a great little story or bops into the room or comments about what I'm wearing or what she's wearing. Hey, Em.
Hi.
Ready for your medicine?
Yep.
How are you?
Good.
Good. There you go. The fact that this year we were able to wean her off the oxygen and she's still doing well during the school day has been huge for her. Long term, who knows? Definitely concerns for the future for this poor little one.
Well, my heart used to run a lot, so I was really scared about that. But since I've been on oxygen more than a year, it's been helping me breathe more and better.
Emma's physical activity is limited. One of the things with pulmonary hypertension is that you have your good days and your bad days. And some days you might be able to run that mile, and other days you just can't. Emma can participate in phys ed, but to a limited capacity.
I can actually trust myself playing tag games, running around. Sometimes it's hard for me to breathe. I just take a deep breath And then when I'm better, I just keep on playing.
I think one of the difficult things with Emma's disease is that it's a rare disease and it's deadly.
The biggest obstacle to this disease is that we don't have enough patients to be able to do research on a wide scale to help us get to the answers quickly. The animal models that we use to study pulmonary hypertension are absolutely critical to the success of finding new therapies for pulmonary hypertension.
Many of the things we try, first we have to prove that they work in an animal model before they can even be considered for safety testing for humans.
The main purpose of using animal models in studying pulmonary hypertension is because for the non-inheritable form, which Emma has, it's just not known what causes it.
So a lot of the work first has to go into proving that they work in the animal models. More importantly, also understand why they work and find out new targets where we can design therapies.
The echocardiography studies that we do in the mice are exactly the same as those that are done in our patients.
And we are able to assess the degree of pulmonary hypertension by using the echocardiogram on the animals. You can then measure how well the animal is responding to a therapy or not.
You cannot do it in a cell culture setting because it's complex physiology. It's a whole system that you have to look at. Using a whole animal can address some of these issues much before we take it to the patient.
So we hope for a cure, and in the meantime, we look for a better quality of life, and we work hard to make that a reality.
So when I started this business, literally I had to say, I'm sorry, we know what's wrong, but we don't know what to do about it. Now I have to say, I'm sorry, we know what's wrong, we can't cure it, but we at least know how to battle it.
Emma's been dancing since she was in first grade at this studio, and it's been a great outlet for her. This is her form of exercise since she can't play sports. This dance studio has been incredibly accommodating. Even when Emma was on oxygen with her dolly, we made it work such that Emma could dance with the rest of the girls and not be, isolated or kept away from what she enjoys doing. She loves it. She just really enjoys the dancing.
I don't think we really know enough about the disease in general, or even about her, to try to make 20, 30, 40-year predictions. It's like everything in medicine, we're just going to have to let time unfold. But I'm quite optimistic for her.
She has gotten down before and asked, why me, why me? But she gets through that and moves forward.
She knows that she has this disease for the rest of her life.
I think she just loves life and wants to just live it.
When I look at the research, my greatest hope, of course, is that the physicians will solve the problem.
And I think that's probably the most important thing, to come up with answers, come up with cures. But in science, sometimes things take time. Eventually, we find a breakthrough.
Our greatest hope is that we would find a cure for the disease. The realistic hope is that we could literally make a contribution, a change in the treatment that would make it better.
You try and cherish all the moments you're together as a family. The good moments, you know. Every time I kiss her goodnight in bed, it's better than at the hospital, you know. Regardless of the cannula, the oxygen on her face, I'm thrilled that she's here, you know, in her bed.
You have to stay positive. I have 2 young children. I have a daughter who's got a chronic illness, who needs a cure. Then I have a son who will need to continuously look out for his sister. And that's a heavy burden for him.
You know, you say to yourself, why me? Why am I getting this? And, you know, none of us have the answers to that. The only thing is that, you know, I think God gives you only what you can handle. And for whatever reason we have this, must be because we can handle it. And I think that, you know, Emma's shown us